This is my entry into the NYX Face Awards Australia and New Zealand. Our challenge was royalty, and this is for our final challenge. So for the top 6, I decided to do a queen bee. Something creature-like, pretty creepy, but also royal. If you guys like the look of this, then please keep on watching. To make my little bees, I just took some leather lace, which I used for the antennas on the bees, and then I found this pom-pom material from Spotlight. I just bought a length of black and yellow and cut the pom-poms off the rope. I then hot glued 3 pom-poms together until I had approximately 54 bees, and 2 hours later. To make the wings, I just cut out some wing-like shapes out of some plastic A4 protective sleeves, and I hot glued them onto the back of the bee. I then trimmed down that leather lace and I hot glued that onto the bee for their antennas. To make my beehive crown, I started off by wrapping my head in Glad Wrap, and this just ensured that my head was nice and flat and acted as a bald cap. To make the beehive, I used a majority of alfoil and duct tape, and basically to get my first ring for the beehive, I just wrapped a whole bunch of alfoil together and secured it with duct tape. I kept putting it on my head to ensure that it was going to fit, and then I would do the second ring and repeat the process until I have a hive-like cone. I secured the rings together using hot glue, and then if there were any gaps within the rings, I would fill that in with hot glue also. Once I knew that it fit right, I continued to smooth out the texture of the hive using latex and baby powder to make a paste. Once I was happy with the consistency of the paste, I continued to apply the paste over the hive using a plastic spatula, and then I smoothed it out with my finger and additional latex. Once the paste had dried, I then went over with a paintbrush and additional latex, and then to paint the hive I used a range of red, orange and yellow acrylic paint, deepening the inside of the rings with black paint. And then the bees that I made prior, I hot glued them onto the hive in an arrangement, and to bring a bit of bling to this hive crown, I went and hot glued jewels into the front of the crown and underneath the bottom ring. To make the queen bee mask and the bee eyes, I just took these 2 fascinators that I got from Spotlight in teardrop shapes. I thought they'd make pretty cool eyes, and I just used my face cast as support to build this. Now to make this latex paste, all it is liquid latex and baby powder, and add the baby powder until you get a nice thick consistency. To help smooth that out, I just add normal latex on my finger, and then I carve out the shape and give it some details. I chuck the fascinators back into the eye sockets just to make sure I've got the right shape. I found that it was a little bit shallow, so I had to make it a bit thicker, adding more latex paste and repeating the process again. Once the latex paste had dried, I then hot glued the fascinators into the eye sockets of the mask, and I also took a sharp knife and cut out some holes so I can breathe. I then used the hot glue gun again to make some honey drips underneath the mask, and then I painted the entire mask with an orange acrylic paint. And this can't be a queen without some bling, so I'm just taking these jewels that are in various sizes and I'm just hot glue gunning them to the mask. I wanted to keep this as symmetrical as possible. It was very time consuming, about 2 hours worth, but it was well worth it. And that's a finished mask. I used a lot of gems and I was surprised that it didn't put that much weight on it, and the prosade was enough to stick it to my face. I also made additional honey drips with hot glue onto baking paper, and I glued them to the back of the mask and painted them with gold acrylic paint. To make the honeycomb netting for my chest and for the side of my face, I just started off with some latex paste. So same old baby powder and latex, I stirred that into a thick paste, and then I dumped all of that onto a plastic surface. I used a plastic spatula to spread that out evenly, ensuring that the sides are nice and thin. And then with additional latex on my finger, I just pressed holes into the latex, and this is to serve as the honeycomb. I set it with baby powder at the end to make sure that it was all nice and set, and then I coloured it with red, orange and yellow acrylic paint, mixing the colours as I applied it to the honeycomb. I then painted orange hexagons around each of the circles to look more like a honeycomb, and then I filled in the hexagons with a dark red paint. To clean up the edges around the hexagons, I just took a pale yellow paint and a small detailed brush, and this also highlights the tops as well. I then outlined each of the hexagons with a black acrylic paint on a thin detailed brush, and this just helped show a little bit more detail and dimension. And then I highlighted in the middle of each of the hexagons with a white acrylic paint. To make the honeycomb for my chest, I just had some baking paper and I printed out this pattern off Google, and all I did was put the baking paper over top of the pattern, and with hot glue I just traced out the honeycomb. And once that dried, it peeled off straight away all in one piece. Finally, the whole makeup process took me about 6 hours. I started off with the bald cap and primed with the Photo Loving Primer. I then coloured in my face with the NYX Mineral Stick Foundation in Fair, and then I blended that in with my beauty blender. To warm up the foundation, I used the yellow concealer and I spotted that all over the foundation area and blended that in. To set the foundation, I used the NYX Stay Matte But Not Flat Powder Foundation in Natural. And then I went ahead and gave myself some serious contouring with the NYX HD blush in Double Dare and also the NYX HD blush in Crimson. To deepen that contour further, I then took the NYX eyeshadow in Raven and just put that against the very far edge. I then intensified that contour with same Raven but with a bit of setting spray on my brush. I then blended out the black with Crimson blush and also took Double Dare down my neck. I used the black liquid liner just along the edge of the contour to draw these hair-like lines. For my lips, I used the black liquid suede in Alien and overdrew my lips slightly, and I extended the corners of my mouth into an upward angle. I contoured my Cupid's bow with the same HD blush in Double Dare and also just under my bottom lip. To intensify that contour, I also took a Raven along the top edge. To make the lips look like they had pollen on them, I used the Vivid Brights in yellow to dot all over my lips and onto my cheeks. I used NYX Liquid Suede in Orange County to dot all over my cheeks and just where the skin is showing once I've got my mask on. I also used the Vivid Brights in yellow as well. And then I dusted NYX Pigment Go Ham all over the spot. I highlighted my Cupid's bow with NYX Jumbo Pencil in Milk, and then I took the NYX Jumbo Pencil in Black Bean to trace around my mask. As my eyes were pretty see-through, I wanted the whole area to be blacked out. And once I laid down that product, I then went in with a foundation brush and blended that out. To set that jumbo pencil, I used the HD finishing powder and dusted that over generously. Make sure you do this or it is going to crease. I then blacked out my bald cap with a bit of black body paint. I put my Beehive crown back on just to make sure that everything was aligning correctly, and I also put the mask up again just so I could see the gaps. Now I took the white jumbo pencil in Milk and drew out where the gaps were, and then I trimmed out my latex honeycomb piece and fixed that on with Prosade. I then trimmed the honeycomb bit down and then glued the edges down along my jawline. I painted the cut edges of the latex with the black body paint just to blend in with my face a little better. And then this wasn't too clever. Be careful using hot glue around your head. But I did it anyway, and I glued some of the gems on just so my crown blended into that honeycomb. I then used some Prosade to glue a little gem to the middle of my bottom lip. And then I continued to glue gems along the bottom side of the latex so that was going to blend in nicely with the crown and the mask. I glued a couple of little bees onto my honeycomb on each side, and then after that I moved on to the body paint. So I just mixed together a yellow and red cream paint to make this vibrant orange, and I stippled that all over, down my arms and along my chest with a foundation brush. I then stippled over some yellow cream paint to give it a little bit of texture. My body was looking a little bit flat, so then I contoured it with the red cream paint. Set the cream paint, I didn't want to waste my HD translucent powder, so I set the whole thing with baby powder. I then intensified the contour further with the red crimson blush. It was then time to glue on my hot glue honeycomb piece. I cut it into smaller shapes just so it would fit with my body better, and then I glued this on with Prozade and latex in some areas. To make the top of the honeycomb stand out even more, I took a yellow cream paint and just feathered that over the top parts of the honeycomb only. To create more depth within the honeycomb, I just took a red cream paint and applied that to one side of each hexagon only. And then I blended out that red cream paint with a little bit of orange. I then shaded the very top corner of each hexagon with a little bit of Raven. To highlight the very tops of the hexagons, once again I went over with a yellow water activated paint. And once I finished that, I stuck on some bees with liquid latex. With a white water activated paint, I then highlighted in the middles of each of the hexagon, and then I added some gems to tie in the overall look. I decided to use one of my gold honey drips as a choker, and I hot glued that to the side of my latex. And the final step to this queen bee was to glue the bee eyes on. So I'm just using Prozade on my face and onto the back of the mask, waiting for that to dry, and then carefully placing the mask and pressing down on where I have the glue. And this is my final queen bee look for our challenge royalty, which is our final challenge for the Face Awards Australia and New Zealand. This was so much fun. The whole competition was insane and such a great experience. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and learned a few things. And if you think that I deserve to win overall, then please vote for me. Thanks guys.